When I was a kid, everyone I know played a horrible prank on me. This is something I should probably be speaking about with a therapist, I know. I would, or I have been, but that's not really an option anymore. In fact, I couldn't tell you how many times I've told this story to various medical professionals. I'm 30 now, 20 years since it happened. I just want it to stop. I was a pretty average kid, I think. A little weird, but every kid is a little weird. I had an older sister, and we fought like two cats. I had a couple good friends, most of whom lived on my street or one street over, and we would meet after school and play until it was time for dinner. My life was fairly ideal. I played soccer, I think. Honestly, I have a lot of trouble remembering much of my childhood. But I remember that I got a Nintendo DS for my 10th birthday, and we had a big party in the backyard. Practically the whole neighborhood showed up. My birthday was just before school got out for the summer, so the air buzzed with excitement, and the evening was warm and felt more alive than other nights. The grown-ups started a fire in our little fire pit, and they sat around it and drank beer while we ran around. I was allowed to stay up past when I usually went to bed, and the other kids chased fireflies with me and roasted marshmallows until late. I remember going to bed happy, excited for summer, and exhausted. I fell asleep quickly, the peel and stick glow in the dark, stars and moon shining on the ceiling above my head. Waking up the day after my birthday, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. I hadn't had a nightmare, it wasn't that. I had slept better than I could really remember ever sleeping. It was late, I realized, that must be it. My mom usually woke me up around 8 if it wasn't a school day. She said it was a good habit to be in the routine of waking up early and starting your day on the right foot. By the light streaming in from my windows and the slightly muggy heat in the room, I figured it was already 10 a.m. or so. I smiled, sliding out of bed. It must have been one final birthday treat, letting me sleep in. She had let me sleep in the day before too, of course, although on my birthday itself I had wanted to get up as early as possible. Mom. I called into the hallway, poking my head out the door. No answer. I frowned. It was Saturday, so my dad was definitely already at work, but my mom wouldn't be. My sister wouldn't be home either, she had left the night before to spend the night at her friend's house. She was 13 now, and allowed to have sleepovers, for which I was eternally jealous. I decided she must be out front in the garden. I put on a shirt and left my room. I smelled coffee, but there was none left in the pot. There were dishes in the sink, too, with remnants of eggs stuck to a pan. It wasn't necessarily alarming, but it was strange, even on days I slept in, there was always breakfast left over for me. I opened the front door, opening my mouth to call out to my mom, but I instantly froze. Halfway up our walkway was the mailman. He was on the ground, sprawled out awkwardly on the cement, fresh blood pooled beneath him in a gruesome splatter. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. His limbs were bent at horrible angles, his face pointed away from me. It almost looked like something, some omnipotent force, had lifted him into the air and then slammed him back down. The package he must have been delivering lay a few feet away, the cardboard dented and soaked in red. I didn't need any confirmation he was dead. It wasn't a question. I had never seen a dead person before. Sometimes my parents had watched horror movies, but that hardly counted. I backed into the house and closed the door behind me. My mind was racing too fast and my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Everything in my body was reeling, so much so that all I could do was move slowly, in a faux sense of calm. Mom. I called out again, into the silent house, my voice breaking. Mom, are you home? Something happened outside. Mom. No one answered. The house felt way too quiet, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I had to brace myself against the wall as I made my way to my parents' room, because I was almost shaking too hard to hold myself up. Mom. I pushed open her bedroom door. It creaked, the sound almost deafening against the silence that blanketed the room. Our old grey cat, Gumbo, weaseled her way through the crack and slipped out into the hallway, brushing against my leg on her way. I saw a lump in the bed. For a moment I thought it was just pillows, but then I realized it couldn't have been. The bed was made, and all the pillows were accounted for, leaning against the headboard. "Mom, are you asleep?" It came out as a whisper, even though it wasn't like I had been trying not to wake her up. I wanted her awake, badly. I think I just somehow already knew. Something was hanging in the air, this heaviness, like the whole world had been blanketed in a thing that was empty and hot and dead. A desert popped into my head, a place that was so far away from everything and completely devoid of anything. Devoid of life. When I pulled back the covers, the shock washed over me like an electric zap. Every one of my veins and bones and muscles felt 20 degrees hotter than they should have been. There was blood everywhere. I could barely see any section of the sheets that wasn't soaked in it. It looked like the cherry juice we sometimes made from the tree in our backyard, squashing the berries with our hands and laughing as the sticky syrup trickled down our wrists. Her eyes were open. Her mouth was open too, wide open, like she was about to scream. I gagged, stumbling backwards and almost falling down. My legs felt like they wouldn't work anymore. I was in a daze as I stumbled back to the kitchen. The eggs on the pan seemed like they were mocking me now. I knew my parents had told me what to do in an emergency, but all of that was gone from me now. This didn't feel like an emergency, it felt more like a horrible nightmare. I pinched myself on the arm, just in case. The neighbors, that was it. I was supposed to call my neighbors. The number was on a sticky note next to the phone. My fingers shook as I dialed the number. They picked up after 3 rings that felt like they took 1 year each. I heard a sort of crackling sound, like someone was moving the phone around. "Hello? Hi?" I cleared my throat, trying to get rid of the lump firmly lodged at the back of my tongue. "This is Jackson, from next door." I heard some sort of giggle, a choked one, like they were trying to hold it back, and then some hushed whispering. "Hi Jackson," the voice said. I assumed it was the mother, Mrs. Winston. "Is everything all right? Can I help you with something?" Something happened, my mom." "Oh, honey," Mrs. Winston said, her tone gentle, but something about it felt deeply off. My stomach twisted. "Why don't you head on over here, HM? We'll figure out what's going on together." "Okay." I remember hanging up before she said anything else. Something about her voice was unnerving me. Still, I didn't know where else to go. I slipped out the back door so I wouldn't have to walk past the mailman, Gumbo watching me go. I knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I stepped into the flower beds, peering in through the windows. Someone was lying on the couch, their head tilted back like they were staring up at the ceiling. For a moment that was what I thought was happening, until I saw that their chest was opened up like a patient on a surgery table. All guts and organs and blood, so much blood. It was Mr. Winston, in his sweater vest and brown dad shorts. Dead like the mailman. Dead like my mom. Something came over me, and I burst through their front door. It was unlocked, which I hadn't really expected, so I went tumbling into the room, landing on my stomach, my face slamming into the floor. Face to face with Mrs. Wilson, who lay dead in front of the phone. Her eyes were open too. There was a fly on one of them, crawling across the white, pausing every few seconds to rub its hands together. I had started to cry. It was finally hitting me that this was real, not some dream, and I desperately wanted my mom. I scrambled to my feet, nearly throwing up when I realized my face was covered in her blood. I swiped at it with my hands, trying to wipe it away as quickly as possible. Then, instinctively, I licked my lips. Horrified, I braced myself for the coppery taste of the blood on my tongue. But it never came. It was sweet. I hesitated, trembling incessantly, before cautiously raising one of my red fingers to my lips. Sweet. Memories flooded my mind, memories of baking with my grandmother, the sweet syrup we would sometimes pour into the mixing bowls. It was fucking corn syrup. I ran to my father's work, which was on the other side of town. By the time I got there I was close to passing out and drenched in sweat, but it had made it a little easier to get here with the road completely devoid of cars. There were some, parked on the side of the road or every now and then in the middle of it, but none of them had people in them. Some of them had blood. Thick and red and gooey blood. The nice receptionist that was always at the front desk, and always gave me candy when my dad brought me in, had her head against the computer. Her hair was matted with red liquid, as if someone had ripped out entire chunks of her scalp. Before I could think too hard about it, I wiped my finger across the side of her head and licked it. It was sweet too. I felt like my brain was going to break, like I was standing on the edge of something completely incomprehensible. I shook the woman. She flopped like a rag doll. I sobbed, shoving her, and she slumped to the ground, her head knocking against the tiles. "Wake up!" I screamed at her. "I know you're not dead." She didn't move an inch. Just stared, unblinking, her mouth hanging half open. I ran into the room my dad usually worked in, scanning it for his workspace. I couldn't remember where it was, just that it was around halfway back, and close to the wall. In every cubicle someone was dead. Sometimes they looked halfway peaceful, as if they'd been caught by surprise, but most of them were eviscerated in one way or another. Entrails hanging out, bones showing, blood sprayed against the walls, even some with faces ripped clean off. It was like something unseeable had swept through the town on a rampage. But all of their blood was made of corn syrup. In a brave moment I even touched one of the organs, something that looked like a strange deflated balloon, and it jiggled, but more like plastic than a human body part. At one point I swore I heard a giggle behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. I found my dad at the water cooler, sitting against the wall, comb paper cup still gripped loosely in his hand. He stared straight ahead, blood leaking from his eyes, nose, and mouth, like he'd exploded from the inside. "Dad," I whispered, grabbing his shoulder. "This isn't funny, please stop." There was a strange look on his face that I could just barely make out through the red. Almost like a smile. Like a smile someone would only make if they were trying very hard not to. I walked back home down the middle of the road, balancing on the yellow lines to have something to focus on, because I was fairly certain if I stopped walking, I wouldn't start again. When I got there, I climbed into bed and I closed my eyes. I didn't know what else to do. Eventually, after what must have been hours and hours of lying there, I drifted off into a restless sleep. I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. I screamed, scrambling away from them, immediately wide awake and terrified. "Whoa." My mom backed away, smiling. "Sorry, buddy, I didn't mean to scare you." I was breathing hard. I looked her over, clutching my chest. She was completely fine. She looked it, at least. She stood there in a white blouse and blue jeans, her hair tied up like always, her eyes bright and happy. What day is it?" Her smile faded, and she frowned a little. It was then that I noticed the smell of bacon wafting in from the kitchen. "It's Sunday, bud, remember? 2 days after my birthday." So yesterday had been real. What happened yesterday? She placed the back of her hand on my forehead, touching softly. "Did one of those neighborhood kids you play with get you sick, honey? Do you feel okay?" I dropped it, because I didn't know what to say. I convinced myself maybe I really was sick, maybe it had been some kind of feverish hallucination. And I was so relieved to see her, I didn't want to think about any of it anymore. I went to eat breakfast, sitting at the table between my dad and my sister, and everything was normal. But when I left the house later that day, I saw it. On the walkway leading up to our house, there was something pink on the pavement, a faint pink stain, like something sweet and red and sticky had been recently scrubbed away. Like I said, it's been 30 years. I've been feeling like I had almost recovered from that incident. I had asked everyone I knew countless times about that day, but none of them seemed to have any idea what I was talking about, but still, I had almost let it go, and it had never happened again. Not until today. Today, when I walked into my therapist's office, it seemed strangely quiet. There was usually music playing, something soothing and soft, and there were people in the waiting room and at the front desk typing on a keyboard. But today, nothing. No one. Silence. I let myself into Dr. Sheldon's office, perplexed. Which is when I found her dead on the carpet, her blood sprayed across all the walls, even dripping from the ceiling. It was crazy, I know that, but I immediately tasted it. Sweet. I rolled her over, and her eyes were open, a strange smile on her face. This time I did something I didn't think to do as a kid. I checked her pulse. She's alive. I don't know what to do. I can't believe they're doing this to me again. Do they think this is funny?